Hello, everybody, and welcome to the February edition of Staying Connected with the Worcester Senior Center. I'm Dr. Michael Hirsch, the Medical Director for the Division of Public Health. And we're in the dog days of winter right now. And February is really the best example month of that. It really gets cold, and Worcester is notorious for having some very snowy weather in this month. Some of the kids obviously love it because it's snow days and lots of fun sledding and those kind of things. But there's a lot going on, and I'll try to go through. Don't worry about this bandage I have on my face. I will tell you the story of it because it's very relevant to what I wanted to talk about this month anyway. So February actually came from the Roman calendar. This time of the year, there was a Roman festival called Februum, which meant purification. And I think, the upper class Romans had baths and then ceremonies, supposedly preparing them for the rest of the year. And we kept that going forward from the Julian calendar, the Roman calendar, into the Gregorian calendar, and February became the second month. So it's a month of purification, and the color that was always associated with purification historically in many different religions was purple. So the flower for the month of February is the aster, which is purple, and the primrose, which is purple. So you see a lot of that. And then the stone for the month of February is amethyst, which is purple. And amethyst is a beautiful color, and it represents purity. So what else happens in February? Well, obviously we have some important dates during the month that we celebrate, right? February 2nd, for those of you who are fans of Punxsutawney Phil, that's Groundhog Day. And the legend is, and it's carried out every year, is that Punxsutawney Phil from Pennsylvania comes out, and if he sees the shadow, it's going to be another 6 months of winter. Living in Pennsylvania as I did for 10 years, I went to Punxsutawney, not during the ceremony on Groundhog Day, but there's this big area, kind of a town green called Cobbler's Knob, and that's where all the ceremonies occur. It's one of my favorite movies ever is Groundhog Day. It's just a very interesting farce about living the same day over and over again until you get the results that you want by improving on a daily basis. Bill Murray is just fantastic in it, and if you haven't seen it, it's a great thing to watch on a snowy day. Andy McDowell and the rest of the cast are terrific. So that's on February 2nd, and on February 9th is National Pizza Day. That's a great day. I think that's one of the most wonderful imports we've gotten from Italy. People argue where it was first served in Italy, but most people agree it's Neapolitan. So Naples is the city that gets most of the credit. Sicily has its own version of the pizza. Almost all the towns will claim that they have a town in Italy that was the first. But the Neapolitan version was the one that made its way over to New York, where it was first served in a restaurant called Patsy's. And then it expanded, and sure enough, now there are regional pizzas everywhere. Chicago pizza, many of you know, is much different than our thin crust pizza that we get out here in the East. It's it's deep dish, so it's really like eating a pie. And then Detroit has its own version. They have a square pizza, and now there's all different kind of regional pizzas that are just delicious. So there's some really wonderful places around Massachusetts to get a really good slice of pizza. They're not all in the north end of Boston. Worcester has its own, the Wonder Bar and several other places, and I would urge you to celebrate pizza night with on the 9th with a good slice of pizza. And then on the 14th is Valentine's Day. Now, most people associate Valentine's Day with, taking your loved one out for a nice dinner, maybe buying chocolates, sending a nice card, and that's definitely something that the original Saint Valentine, who was a Roman religious figure, started. But he has a very interesting association with epilepsy. He's the patron saint of epilepsy, which is a seizure disorder. And this apparently stemmed from his time in prison, where after being beaten, some of these inmates that he was with had seizures. And that's something that we know. In trauma, about 25% of head-injured patients have a post-concussive seizure. Most of those kind of seizures go away, as opposed to the type that start up just randomly and end up being a focus in your brain that is stimulating the electric system there. These traumatic seizures go away. But allegedly, St. Valentine cured a bunch of these seizures. Whether he actually cured them or whether they just didn't continue because they were post-traumatic, and 75% of them aren't supposed to recur once they have one. Whatever the reason, he is associated with the epileptic community, and he's not just a nice postcard or gift card guy. So Valentine's Day is a very important day, and the very next day in February is a tribute to Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who, as many of you know, was one of the early pioneers in trying to get women the right to vote and women equal rights. And it was only this past year that the Equal Rights Amendment was finally passed under the Biden administration. That story of the struggle of the suffragettes until they could get the 21st Amendment that gave them equal rights was a long one, and Elizabeth Cady Stanton was really one of the heroines of that struggle. And then we know that in the course of the calendars, we have every fourth year, on an even year, an extra day in February to make up for the way that the rotation of the Earth and the fact that we kind of need to make up for a day of time. They give us the extra day in February in what's called a leap year, and we just had one of those last year. This year we'll only have 28 days in February. So February is one of those rare months that will probably not have a full or a new moon. It happens very unusually, and in our case, we're not going to see another one of the months where February has a full moon and a new moon till 2037. So we're going to have to wait a little while. So February is a very interesting month that way. What I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is communicable diseases, because there's a lot going on right now. As we film this, it's towards the end of January, but I think these are going to be lingering into February, and you ought to at least be aware of them. I'm not trying to set up any kind of a fear thing. I'm just trying to make you aware that you should stay connected with some of the public health announcements that are coming out. So we are in the midst of kind of a 4 viral illness surge of respiratory ailments. And I have one right now as I'm speaking to you. My chest is kind of congested, and every once in a while I'll cough. I took some cough medicine before we are filming this, so I hope I don't interrupt the show with that. But the 4 viruses, you know of them, except for maybe one. There is COVID, which is still in the Omicron variant phase. It is rising in the wastewater, but seems to be leveling off right now towards the end of January. We have flu A and flu B. Flu A and flu B are on the rise, and they cause many of the same symptoms as COVID, but they don't have, it seems, the lingering effects that COVID can have. It seems that about 10 to 15% of COVID sufferers will have long-term symptoms. But in particular, itchy eyes this year with influenza. Itchy eyes more than fever, but you can get fever, achy bones, just a feeling of malaise. Your appetite's not so great, and your GI tract is not working so well, and all of those things add up to kind of a crappy feeling. And then the 4th one is a new one called human metapneumovirus. It's not new. It's kind of being publicized now by public health outlets. It's been around for at least 30 years. It was discovered in the late 80s, and it's probably something that a lot of people have already gotten and apparently have gotten immunity from. But we are now testing more vigorously. If you go to an emergency room or an urgent center and saying, I have a bad cough, I don't feel well, they'll give you a panel, and this will be one of the things that can be tested for, and people get that and say, what does it mean? It doesn't mean anything. All of these viral illnesses, except for COVID, we treat symptomatically. So you stick to hydration, Tylenol, trying to avoid crowds, don't go to work, be careful if you cough that you cover your mouth with your elbow. COVID's a little different. If you have COVID, the recommendation there is that you wear a mask and stay home, and a couple of days after you are asymptomatic without taking Tylenol, because if you're masking your fever by taking Tylenol, that doesn't count. Then you can get back to work with a mask, usually recommended for 5 days after you come back. Then the other respiratory problem that is still going around is called atypical pneumonia. Atypical pneumonia is usually caused by a bacteria called mycoplasma, and it's an opportunistic infection. It usually means that you might have had COVID, you might have had the flu. A lot of the bacteria cleared out, and in its place came this mycoplasma. And this is very easily treated with what's called a Z-Pack, where you get azithromycin or Zithromax. That's the brand name for it. It comes in a 5-day pack that you can take, and usually responds very quickly. But again, this causes weakness, malaise, low-grade fevers, and a non-productive cough. So I suspect that's what I have, but I can't be sure. But if that wasn't enough in communicable diseases, norovirus is here. Norovirus, you may have heard stories of norovirus on these big cruise ships, that have 15,000 people on it, and 75% of the whole ship gets infected, and it is a nasty GI bug. You end up feeling nauseated, and vomiting is very frequent and very profound. And then it unfortunately also causes stuff the other way with diarrhea. So you can get pretty dehydrated, and especially older people like us, we can get very dehydrated quickly. So you have to stock up on things like Gatorade, and even if you take like a half a bottle in and then you puke it up in 10 minutes, you got to keep pushing. Some of it is going to get in you, and you have to stay hydrated. Now, I just had my family together for the holidays, and my son-in-law, daughter-in-law, and their little 2-year-old all got norovirus. 2 of them got through it in 24 hours, but they felt lousy for another 2 days. But my daughter was affected enough that we had to start an IV on her. And after a liter of fluid, she really rebounded. But that's what happens to younger people, and it also happens to the older people, that older people can get very dehydrated. So the recommendation here is that you really should think about, hand hygiene is the best way to prevent the spread of this thing. So if you're going to places that you don't know, and you take a bathroom break, and you really should spend an extra bit of time with soap and water. Soap and water works better than Purell. Purell is an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. It doesn't work against norovirus. The only thing that works against norovirus is soap and water, or chlorine-based sanitizers. So if you have Clorox wipes, that kind of material is hard on your hands, but that's what kills the norovirus. And you have to be very careful that you don't handle diapers and don't wipe your hands afterwards, or go to the bathroom and don't soap and water your hands after that. That's how it spreads. And it's very, very infectious, and it can go through a family, go through a cruise boat very quickly. So don't kid around with it. It's very important that that this not spread all over a family with weakened people, elderly people, or babies. So when I was explaining all this to the Board of Health last week at the meeting that we had, I sounded again like a Debbie Downer, like what else could happen? There is something else going on that we don't know what the impact is going to be yet. It hasn't happened yet. There have been 66 cases recorded in the U.S. of bird flu in humans. Every single one of these people that suffer from bird flu are people that work with livestock or work with poultry in an industrial way, running a chicken coop or helping out with cattle or cows in an industrial situation. Why? The birds are being fed to the cows, and the cows are getting bird flu. They're not dying in droves, but the birds are dying in droves. As a matter of fact, just this week, 6 dozen birds died in Plymouth, and nobody exactly knew why. And this is what you got to think about when you see a dead bird as you're walking in the neighborhood. If it's not something that happened because they smashed into a window and just are out there on the street, it may be that there's bird flu around. And we suspect there's a lot of bird flu in the bird population. But the bird population has bird flu that has not yet shown the ability to transmit to the humans. So how does that work? Well, as we saw in COVID, viruses mutate, and their job as a mutation is to try to spread more. They want to affect more people and spread more widely. So far, the bird flu hasn't figured out how to make the jump to humans, but the suspicion at the CDC is that it is really trying hard, and we have to wait and see how many other species might have it. So, for example, if you have a bird feeder in your backyard and you notice either a dead bird there or any kind of dead animal, that could be because the feeding that you're doing is spreading bird flu from either the bird droppings or, like a squirrel got into your stuff and then spread it. It may spread to the squirrels, but not so far to the humans. If it does spread to humans, we're very worried because there's so many millions of birds, and this could be our next big pandemic. We know that one gentleman died in Louisiana of the bird flu. Again, a livestock worker. He had a lot of medical problems to begin with. So we don't know how bad bird flu in humans is going to be. It may not be a terrible virus. We do have a vaccine for it already. And the question's going to be, are we going to do, if it becomes a big outbreak, are we going to do a warp speed thing like was done for COVID-19? Are we going to be able to mass produce this vaccine in such a way we can distribute it quickly and get it out there? And is the current administration with the folks that are being proposed in the various medical roles in the cabinet who are very strongly anti-vax people, are they likely to support that kind of distribution plan? So these are the things I can't fully predict. And certainly in the public health circles, that's what I worry the most about. We just went through the presidential inauguration just before we were filming this show, and the 21st of February features President's Day. That has been a combo of the February 12th birthday of Abraham Lincoln, our 16th president, and George Washington, born on February 22nd. There were 2 days off when I was growing up, but now it's been combined into the third Monday of every February. And it just shows a contrast, I think, between those two great leaders and what we have been dealing with over the last 8 years, and unfortunately probably for the next 4 years, just in terms of just taking the most dire situations, like the colonies going up against the biggest empire in the world, the British Empire, or the Union fracturing and us having to fight our southern neighbors. I mean, these are two big crises. I don't see that kind of leadership forthcoming. So we have to be our own best advocate. And fortunately in Massachusetts, I think internally within the Massachusetts Department of Public Health and the government, we're going to be one of the best states in terms of how we will protect ourselves. So I think you can count on the Worcester Department of Public Health to be there for you if such an outbreak happens. I hope that brings you some small comfort after all of this Debbie Downer stuff I just went through. But now I'm going to talk to you about something that became real for me, and I wanted to just give you a warning about it, you know. I feel that I'm a fairly fit, well, maybe not the most fit, but, you know, I'm a reasonably fit 70-year-old. Turned 70 in May. And I went to my primary care doctor a couple of weeks ago, and he told me he thought that I needed to lose some weight, and he thought I should walk some more. And I have to admit, I lost my dog in May. My dog of 12 years, he was a little corgi named Pivot, and he was the love of my life, and next to my wife and grandkids and children. I mean, but you know how you get attached to dogs. And since I wasn't walking him, I got kind of a little bit lazy or sedentary. It kind of even bummed me out a little bit to go on the same trails that I used to take the dog. I said, it's my bad. So when he admonished me to go out and walk, which I totally agree with, and we talk about this a lot on this show, I took a walk, and I think I overdid it. Because I got very, very tired on the way home. I was kind of feeling this feeling of being winded, and I lost my balance and took a huge hit to my chin. So I cracked 2 teeth on the upper, but those upper teeth went through the lower lip, below the lip, and gave me this big laceration down below, which has been, I'm trying to manage it. I saw the emergency department doc, sewed me up. I saw a dentist and an oral surgeon the next day. And I got an infection in the wound, which is not unusual because this area and your saliva is full of, you know, bacteria that aren't so great to help healing. So I've had to, you know, wear this thing, and every, 6 hours it drains enough that I have to cover it up, and I'm very embarrassed about it. But what it's an illustration of is how falls are the #1 cause of trauma in our elderly age group, over 65. And the #1 cause of morbidity. They can be less dramatic than mine, but I walked away from that trauma feeling very lucky, because if I had fallen a little north on my face, I would have probably had a concussion and potentially bones that fractured in my face. I must have not had as much osteoporosis in my chin. Back in the day when somebody got knocked out, the sports writers would say, well, he led the fight with his chin. I led that fight with my chin, but that turned out to be a relatively good thing. I can deal with the soft tissue infection and that kind of stuff, but to have really had a major internal bleed or plastic surgery need, I was very fortunate. And what did I do wrong? Well, I did several things. I wasn't well hydrated. I knew that. I had I don't know what, I had something for lunch that was very spicy, and I didn't drink enough, and I was feeling thirst all through the walk, and I didn't have a bottle with me. I was also overdoing it because I was already tired about a mile into the walk, and I insisted on pushing for the whole 2.5 miles that my path would have taken. Should have cut it off at, the 1 mile mark where I was feeling tired and just walked back. Number 3, I very frequently take a walking stick when I'm walking in the woods, but I didn't take one this day because I was walking on the street. And I'm not going to do that again. I think the walker definitely helps. I mean, the stick definitely helps with my balance. And some people actually take a real walker if they're very unsteady, and that's better than being sedentary, but you have to be really careful what surface you're on. And now in February, where there's going to be a lot of slush and snow and ice, you got to be very smart about where you walk, when you walk, what time of the day you walk, and make sure that you're not doing anything that indicates that your body is kind of being stressed out to the max. So be judicious about how long you walk, and if you'll follow my bad example, take a walking stick, take a bottle of water, take some breaks. It's, you know, you're not training for the Olympics anymore. You could absolutely get through a nice, comfortable walk. And doing it that way, you can actually look around and say, wow, I'm in a nice park, I'm in a nice track, or I'm in the woods, wherever you're walking. I don't even think I take advantage of the actual visualization of nature around me. I'm usually listening to a podcast, and that probably distracts me from actually getting the relaxation effect that walking is supposed to do. It's the best exercise. Everyone agrees on that, but not the way I did it, and I'm paying for it now. I hope by the next time we see each other, this is all healed up. But falls are very, very important to try to prevent. Now, in your house, you know there are a lot of falls that are preventable, right? But you know, we have our long-standing dwellings, right, where we treasure some of our items. We have throw rugs, and maybe we have a favorite lamp, but there's a cord that goes under one of these rugs. All of these are trip hazards, and there are things you can actually go online and give yourself a home inspection, and you can see where all of the problems, the hazards are, and things that you can do to mitigate them. Do you have a set of stairs in front of your home that don't have guardrails? Do you have a pet that may be kind of underfoot when you come home? Do you have, like I mentioned, these little rugs that could slip or slide under your feet? Is the lighting in your house good enough so that you don't fumble in the dark on some of these inside walks? You know, so having night lights or the ability to turn on the light easily when you come in the door, that's something you should definitely consider. If you have a situation with your health that needs you to go to the bathroom at night, in the middle of the night, you should have some kind of a light that detects motion. So it doesn't have to be on all the time. But when it detects that you are moving towards the bathroom, you have that light that pops on and gives you the security of getting to the bathroom safely. So I can't enumerate enough of these mitigations, but we work with the Senior Center. We've done several programs called A Matter of Balance, which tries to promote keeping your balance. That's one of my problems, is my balance has not been good since I went through chemotherapy several years ago. And we also work with the fire prevention department to kind of look at these home hazards, and they'll do an inspection for you, mostly looking for fire-related hazards, but you've got to be able to do an exit plan and not fall on the way, so they'll do the mitigations for that too. And I think that if if my example is not enough, just look up falls online. You'll see thousands and thousands of articles about how falls are terrific problems for the elderly. We also see it in the little kids as well, but their risks are a lot different than ours because we're on blood softener, blood thinner medications. We're on all different kind of comorbidity kind of medications that can be badly affected if you have a fall and hit your head, hit your chest. So I would definitely urge you to think about fall prevention in your life. How could you do better? And pretty much that's all I have for the February session we were doing. I think that it's a cold month. It's one that can sometimes make you sad because you're not getting out as much maybe your circle of friends kind of gets a little more narrow because people are afraid of getting out in the cold weather or slipping and falling in slushy, snowy weather. Whatever it is, I think you should look at it as a phase, right, of the year and take the maximum advantage, if you can, of activities that you know are safe. Do a Zoom, do a FaceTime chat with your loved ones. Do something that is very nice and constructive, like an art project, or read a nice book. I think the seasons are still something that we enjoy here, the changing of the seasons, and I hope that we don't start to see the extremes of climate change that we saw in California during the month of January with those horrible fires. But climate change is going to be an ongoing challenge for the whole world, and we're going to have to start addressing the challenges of this a lot more aggressively. I think the city of Worcester has done a really good job planting trees and figuring out how they can reduce greenhouse gases and promote better health overall, but we got to keep vigilant about it. And now we have an administration that doesn't really believe in climate change. So we withdrew from the Paris Accords in January, which was the international agreement about how we were going to try to reduce our emissions by a certain percent by 2050. It's all representative of the fact that the current administration believes that the answer to everything is drill, baby, drill, and that's not the way to go. That's how we got where we are. So with that, I will say I wish you all the best. I hope that we see you back in March. March comes in like a lion and goes out like a lamb. I hope that's the case for us. Maybe the groundhog will give us that prediction. And thanks for watching another edition of Stay Connected with Your Health with the Worcester Senior Center and the Worcester Division of Public Health. Mike Hirsch signing off.